Picard switches to decaf. We've got hipster Romulans working in a Borg cube. And who's the bad guy here? Synthetics, Romulans, or the Federation? Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with CIRROC LOFTON.
Hello. What's up, guys?
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are doing a review of Picard's very first episode, Remembrance, directed by Hannah Culpepper, and the story is by James Duff. You all know CIRROC LOFTON. He was Jake Sisko on Deep Space Nine. We got to see the first 3 episodes at the Hollywood premiere, but we are only reviewing 1, and no spoilers for episodes 2 and 3, right?
I'm not going to do any spoilers. I'm just going to be spoiling this episode for those of you that haven't seen it. Hopefully, you're listening to this after having seen it, because we're going to be picking apart a few scenes and taking a look at things in depth.
Mm-hmm. So, first things first. Overall, I mean, looking at the production value, looking at, production design, the acting, the writing, directing, overall, what did you think? Any first impressions of it?
Okay. Well, we're going to overall me.
We can overall it a little later once we get all the ideas out.
Well, okay. Let me say then for the production design, I'll start there. We're having a lot of this first episode take place in on Earth and on his chateau. One of the things that I did not like is the chateau and the darkness of it. I prefer it were more light and bright and futuristic and modern. I didn't like that it was more Victorian and just a traditional French chateau looking place.
See, I love that about it, but I'm a super Francophile, being a Frenchman myself. So when I see that, it seems like an authentic, chateau that is going to be made out of stone and not going to have a lot of light, not a lot of windows. Now, to your credit, to your point, this is still 400 years in the future. They can afford a few lights, right?
Well, there would be some other lighting source, some kind of, they've got 3-dimensional translucent television, so you would think they would be able to project light in different places. It was too dark for me, too cavern looking, like a traditional French, chateau looks like. But I had a problem with them not modernizing it and not having that kind of more futuristic appeal to it. That's just my critique. And so it doesn't lend well to production design. It doesn't give the green light to for me to really give compliments on the production design, because that's like, who can't put that together? I'm sure you can find one of those, anywhere if you look hard enough. But that was one thing I did not like so much.
Well, finding a chateau in California might not be as easy as one might think.
Well, depends on where you're looking, but yeah,
I found one. Yeah.
So
behind
that
me,
was my one thing. Yeah, you've got the real touch they put it was the robotic
sprinkler system
that they had there, and that was kind of cool. But then you would expect those kind of modern touches on the inside, but it was like it looked like my, not my place, but like a place I've been to. It didn't look that futuristic. And I have, problems with that. That's a cheat to me. And it's a way to get around the production design and the elaborate set building, which I understand. Which I understand to a degree, because they're obviously probably going to be moving away from that location, and it's not going to take place at a chateau. Right. So that's just a place. But
by the way, I was going to say that at the end of this first segment, stay tuned, because I'm going to give the cutting room floor trivioids that we had at the beginning. I said the 3 things at the very beginning.
Yeah.
I had a few that didn't make the cut, and I want to throw those out, and I want you to tell me if I should have switched some out for that.
I'd love to hear it. I like the decaf one, because he's certainly on his decaf tea. He's all about it.
As a Star Trek fan and a huge Picard fan, I have to say that was a beautiful touch. Because he's always he's known for Earl Grey hot. Right. And this time he said Earl Grey, and every Star Trek fan was like, I know where this is going. He said decaf. And I'm sure we all had a little squeal moment there.
We're like, wait a minute, he put a twist on it.
That was good. It was funny. It was endearing, charming. I thought it was, and especially because it wasn't the obvious answer. The obvious answer is to have him say his catchphrase, Earl Grey hot, for everybody to freak out about, but they put a little twist on it, I thought it was great. Let's actually just take it from the beginning here. It opens with the song Blue Skies. Picard's playing poker with
Now,
Data.
see, when I first saw that, I actually initially thought that was the intro theme song. And
interesting.
It tricked me a little bit because it started off with the ships in there and the space scenes. And I was thinking I'm watching the intro credits, right?
Yeah.
Until then I saw the intro credits about, 5 minutes later, and I realized, okay, so what I thought was the intro is not the intro, and that is the intro. And it's a little bit different, but still has that James Bondy feel to it, like I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But Blue Skies, it threw me off, but it did. It started off with Blue Skies.
I actually really like the opening theme. I like it a lot. It's more. It's just like the show. It's more sophisticated. It's more refined. It's not that catchy tune that we're used to. We're used to some kind of catchy, snazzy tune.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because I actually wrote that in my notes. The music is not catchy. It's not. It's not one of those things where it comes on like, oh, that's that song. It's like.
But see, that's something that lately I've been seeing more of. When Discovery first came on, I was like, oh yeah, I like the theme, but it's not very catchy. But then the more you hear it, the more you realize there is a good hook.
It is catchy.
And the same thing, when I first heard Game of Thrones, I was like, this tune sucks. It's lame. But then, we all know, once you get used to it, you love that Game of Thrones tune. When you hear that sound, it means it's about to go down, So,
yeah, this theme song is more violin-y. It has more of a violin feel to it, and it's pretty good. Like you said, the more you hear it, the more it weighs in on you, right? That's how these songs are.
Yeah, and I like the visuals of it too. I
like
really
the visuals,
but I like the Discovery one too, even though that one's very different. I think they're very artistic and sophisticated. I like it. Who's that? Jeff Russo, I believe, doing it. So
he does both of them.
Mm-hmm. Kudos to him.
Yeah. I mean, it's in line with the songs. It takes a while for theme songs to catch on and become something that's in our head. But I do like the stylistic of it. The way they montage it together, the feel of the space shots that they use. But we got to talk right away. I mean, we can't go too far without talking about how a black guy got killed in the first 5 minutes of the first episode. I'm not going to let that go.
Is this a horror movie? What is this?
I can't let that go, man. The brother got to die within the first 5 minutes. I took note of that again. Actually,
he had 3 lines too.
Yeah, it was at the 5 minute mark, right in the 5 to 6 minute mark, and he was already dead. And I'm thinking to myself, what is that? A sacrificial lamb type thing? Is that like hitting a bottle of champagne against a ship? Is that like how you christen a show? You're like, oh, we gotta get somebody, get the brother down in the first 5 minutes. That was bad, man. They didn't have to do us like that.
I did look up the actor, by the way, and he's got a ton of acting credits. I don't remember what they were, but I kind of looked people up just to kind of see what their deal was, and he's a very accomplished actor, so good for him. So shout out.
What kind of alien was he playing? Do you know that?
That was something I wanted to bring up. As far as I know, this is a new alien species, unless it's a new take on a previously known alien species. That's also possible. But as far as I know, we've never seen this alien, or we've never seen this take on an alien.
Now, there's certain reptiles that actually blink their eyelids in the same manner that he was blinking his eyelids
Exactly.
in that.
And she said, "Oh, I love it when you do that." And he's like,
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. I wish I could do that.
I don't.
You don't.
I don't think
Well,
people would like it as much as she did. I don't
yeah.
think
Well,
a
not
lot of
if it
people are ready
ends the
for
way
that.
it didn't end well for him. That's for sure. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, they killed the brother in the first 5 minutes. I have to call them out on that. I'm not going to let it slide.
Yeah.
Um, so we talked about the opening credits, and I actually wrote down here. There was a few things that I liked. I liked the replicator, the way they used the graphics on the replimat when they were making stuff. I think he made like a vanilla something for her when he went to the
Yeah.
replimat. And I like the way they actually showed it materializing. It was a little bit of an advance on the way they've done it before, where it was just already there, kind of materializing from like a beam mode, right?
Yeah, I believe Discovery did one little thing like that in one of the very first episodes where it kind of shows like a super close up of like the molecules coming together or something.
Yeah, it
But it
looks like a
wasn't like
3D printer printing up something.
yeah,
Actually,
which
it's
would
pretty.
make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that use of the technology. That's what I really watch when I watch these things. I look for the small things that really are innovative.
Hmm.
There was another thing that jumped out at me when the makeup artist was putting makeup onto the reporter that was going to interview Picard,
Right.
and the way she was applying the makeup was through this digital screen, right? She
Yeah.
actually wasn't touching her face.
Yeah. There are a lot of things that Star Trek fans are going to look at, but I feel like most of the things that people are going to be talking about happen in the first 10 minutes. And the reason I say that is because that's when we're introduced to the new takes on technology. That's when we're introduced to the new setting. And most importantly, that interview was not just an interview to show that Picard is crotchety or whatever. That interview was to give us all the backstory on the last 20 minutes, to answer all the questions that all the nerds have, which is what happened here, what happened there, why is he this, why is he, how is this tied to the JJ film? All those questions that just serve to give us the backstory as to what's happened in the last 20 years. And I think that's what's going to be picked apart the most initially, or it should be, because in 5 minutes, we just got caught up in 20 years.
Yeah, and I have a little commenting on that, and I had questions about that particular scene, which I thought was really one of the pivotal scenes of the show, because, like you said, it gave us a lot of insight to where he was mentally, what he was thinking, the kind of guilt that he was weighing on his shoulders, or what he wasn't, wearing on his shoulders, just the way he was looking at things, his perspective.
Mm.
And in that scene, he distinctly says the Federation wasn't the Federation, something to that extent, right?
Yeah, I've got the line because it was a good one. She said, "Why did you leave Starfleet?" And he said, "Because it was no longer Starfleet."
Right,
And
right,
that gives us a really big clue as to kind of what's going on in the world around him. Is that
right.
the question is Starfleet, is the Federation actually the bad guy right now, to where one of their poster children, Captain Picard says, I'm done with Starfleet. I'm done with the Federation because uh they're not what they used to be. I can't stand behind them anymore.
Yeah, that was interesting, and it was funny because I remember now DS9's first episode where he was giving direct orders to Sisko, and Sisko was basically telling him that the Federation or Starfleet is no longer Starfleet. I can't take those orders, and it was almost the same, right? It was. I felt that kind of a moment there.
Similar beats, and I do want to ask you. This may be a longer question, or a longer answer, I should say, but as far as the feel of things, you were on Star Trek for 7 years. You were in Deep Space Nine for the entirety of the 7 years. After watching this episode, does it feel like Star Trek to you? Not obviously, there are going to be updates. It's going to be different, the technology, the directing style, but does it have the same feel, some elements, some themes? Do you recognize it as Star Trek?
That's a good question, and I'm gonna say tentatively, and only because I'm gonna judge it on this first episode alone.
Mm.
I'm gonna say I'm leaning that away from it. It does not feel as Star Trek to me as the other shows that I've watched so far. Um, and the reason I have that is because um, I told you about the chateau feeling that I had with the location of there. They also took place, a lot of it took place at the Archives Museum location, which looked like, the old forum where the Lakers used to play. It kind of had that feel.
That was one of the possible things I was going to say at the very beginning. One of the trivioids was I was going to say that Picard visits a Star Trek convention, because it kind of reminded me of when you go into the Star Trek convention and they have those little rooms that are separated, and this is the Picard room, and so for me, I loved it because I was like, oh, it looks like he's going to a little Star Trek convention side room or something.
Yeah.
So to me, it felt great.
Yeah. So actually, I felt sci-fi. I just didn't feel the Star Trek of it yet, and I guess a lot of that has to do with uniforms. A lot of Star Trek I identify with seeing people wearing the uniforms, right? They're wearing their traditional outfits, and I didn't get that, so I got more traditional clothes, earthly looking clothes.
Did you notice the uniforms when he went to Starfleet headquarters?
Yes,
and so we did see those a little bit. That was at San Francisco, which was amazing. I know we're skipping ahead here, but I love seeing San Francisco because that's got this. We all know that's where Starfleet Academy is.
Right. I like the way they portrayed that with they had the Golden Gate Bridge look on it. But yeah, I feel like I will get the Star Trek feel for this show once Picard has found himself a vessel to captain, and I just don't feel it yet. Right now, I still feel like a sci-fi feel, but I don't feel the official Star Trek stamp on it. It's building up to it. I just don't feel it at this exact moment. We don't have a crew. We don't, we've got Data in a box, in a drawer.
It's a Data in a box. It's like Saturday Night Live, right?
Yeah,
there. I'm not taking that any further though.
Don't go any further than that. But if you know what we're talking about. And she pulls open the drawer. Data 2.0 is sitting in the drawer, and I mean, there were things that were elements of it, and we didn't talk about the opening scene with Data at all much, or any of the Data scenes yet. But no, I still haven't fully gotten the stamp yet. I need to see him in action in his capacity as a captain.
What's really interesting about that? Besides hearing you talk about it, because you've been in Star Trek for 7 years of your life, but for me, being a fan for decades, I have a feeling that this has a similar kind of arc as Deep Space Nine, which I think is the best written of all the Star Trek series, including current ones. Because if you compare this to the pilot episode of Deep Space Nine, Emissary, which I consider to be the best pilot of all Star Trek series, it did have that first episode of what's going on here? This is kind of the anti-Star Trek episode, where you have Sisko, kind of going, not necessarily going against orders, but certainly not happy with them. And he's not happy with Starfleet as a whole, and he doesn't know if he wants to be a part of it. And he's kind of disgruntled. And so I feel like it has a lot of similar beats there. And I feel like that's where the heart of Star Trek is beating in this episode and in this series. It's kind of hidden. It's kind of definitely underlying, but it has a very Deep Space Nine feel as far as the themes and the underlying messages. But of course, it's completely updated, kind of like how Discovery is, which is kind of new Star Trek. And I don't think old Star Trek is going to exist anymore, except for in the themes and in some of the storytelling.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I actually feel it was even more direct as far as the borrowing of themes in this first episode. There were a lot of things that I was basically felt like they were literally stealing from DS9, and I'll give you one of the examples. Picard is starting to have these visions and dreams, much like Sisko had visions and dreams with the prophets.
And with Jennifer.
Right, and with Jennifer. And so they started it off the same kind of
the same Data way. Is his Jennifer. That is the cutest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Data is his Jennifer. That's so sweet. That's
his Jennifer Sisko right there.
Happy place. Yeah. That's his happy. You're right. That's absolutely a very similar theme. That's his happy place that he lost. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like, okay, that's something that's been borrowed. The other thing that I felt like was borrowed was even the idea of Sisko and Jake, the father-son idea, was kind of borrowed in this opening pilot when you talk about Data and this girl now, or this twin girl, right?
Twins, yeah.
And there's this connection there where she gets visions about him being somebody important to her. So again, this borrowing of visions, connections of parenthood, things like that. That was a very DS9-ish.
Yeah, I don't remember that being in any other series. So it's definitely these two. It's definitely Picard and Deep Space Nine. So we're going to go to a commercial, or not a commercial, but a break in just a second here. It's going to be like a 1-second break, you guys. Don't even worry about it. But I will say that here are the ones that didn't make the cutting room floor of the opening trivioids. Number one was Picard dreams about the D. But then I wasn't sure. Because he dreams about the Enterprise, and it's the Enterprise D. But then I was like, well, is it the Enterprise E or is it the Enterprise D? And I feel like somebody out there knows the answer. So please let us know in the comments below if that's the D or the E, if Picard's dreaming about the D or not. The other one was Picard has a gambling problem because the last episode of Next Generation, he's finally coming in and gambling, playing poker with everybody else before he did. Little did they know that they created this monster where he's like, I don't want the game to end. He's like in nervous sweats and he's like, I got to keep gambling. And I said, Picard takes a trip to the Star Trek convention. That was the other one.
Oh, well, we mentioned that one, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so maybe those are best left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, especially the taking the D or dreaming of D. That's
dreaming of the D.
The D.
Enterprise D, of course. So we'll be right back with the seventh. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the seventh rule. I just thought of something just now before we get back into what we were discussing specifically. For those of you watching or listening to our show for the very first time, this podcast originally had CIRROC as well as Aaron Eisenberg. So we had Jake and Nog together again, which was a wonderful thing, a beautiful thing that lasted about 8 months before our brother Aaron left us. So every time we review an episode of Deep Space Nine, he's there where, we kind of feel like he's still there. Sometimes we tell a joke that Aaron would have said, or we say Aaron would have loved this episode, or we think of an observation Aaron would have made. And it just kind of hit me that we should kind of think about how Aaron would feel about this episode, about this series in this new direction. What do you think, knowing him for 27 years, 28 years almost? How do you think he would have felt about this?
Well, right away, I know he would have asked if he was going to be in it or not, and when he was going to be in it, and how come they haven't called him. So that would be his first priority. But looking at it as a critical observer and just critiquing it, I'm sure he would be observing the way it looks visually. That he liked to look at the director's shots and the pace. He'd always pay attention to those type of things, and I wonder if he would have if he would have answered the Star Trek question, how he would have answered it if he felt like it was Star Trek enough for him at this point. One of the things when I was writing it down, I thought of him making a critical critique of it as well. And the thing that bothered me was, I thought of Aaron, and it's the scene where the guys appear in her apartment and kill the black guy, the four guys with motorcycle helmets.
Uh-huh.
And then they show up later on and kill her later as a twin with the motorcycle helmets. And I felt like he would have not been happy with the motorcycle helmets either. I felt like that was it looked like a Power Rangers movie in those like instances where she's fighting them on the stairwell. It reminded me of the Power Rangers. And
remember when we had that episode where you were the leader of the Power Rangers and I had them behind me? Let me see if I can find that while you finish your thought.
Yeah, that's what I thought of. I thought of the Power Rangers, and I was like, this looks like the Power Rangers. Why this fight scene is kind of a little bit remedial for me, especially that I'm seeing these guys with all black with motorcycle helmets on. It didn't look like it took me to this futuristic place, and that was one of my critiques of it's small, but it's there, and I can't get around it. And I know other people out there are going to be saying the same thing, because in the race full of aliens and all these kinds of things, they just put on some guys with motorcycle helmets and just said, "I would just cover it up and deal with it like that." That's kind of a simple way to do it.
So thank you for bringing up the Power Rangers. For those of you listening in, you can't see, but behind me, there was one scene that had kind of looked like CIRROC was the leader of the Power Rangers.
It was when the school scene where all the kids were out and the Bajorans were basically taking over the school lesson plan.
Because we have like the Green Ranger, Pink Ranger, Red Ranger. CIRROC was the Purple Ranger.
I was also the tall ranger.
The leader of the Rangers, yeah.
The leader of the group, But yeah, that's what it was, Power Rangery to me with the all black motorcycle helmet guys. So that was my critique. I actually thought of Aaron when I thought he'd laugh that one off and think the same kind of thing when he saw it. But there's also other little hints in there that I thought were interesting. And one of them was when Picard is being interviewed by the woman, and he says the pyramids were a symbol of colossal vanity.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting line.
Yeah, because she was saying that it was such a huge undertaking like the pyramids. And what he was trying to say was that it was a different motivation. He's like, if you're talking about saving all, billions of lives and to be similar to building pyramids, then you're missing the motivation of the two things.
No, I totally get it. I just liked the line, and I thought it was
a lot of good lines in there. There was another one that another line I liked very quickly between the two of them was when she was kind of grilling him, and he says the Romulans asked for our help. And she says, he said, so they needed to save countless millions of lives or whatever. And she goes, Romulan lives. And he says, no, lives. And I was like, that's solid right there. That's just two words, but it works. And so, sometimes we can pick apart when the writing's a little, who knows, but we also got to give kudos when I thought that was good. Romulan lives, no, lives.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that when you say Black Lives Matter, and you can say no lives matter. You can say it in the same kind of way. So I mean, it's a good argument on his part. I actually, in my mind, I'm always trying to find different ways to have the expose that you needed in the interview scene with the reporter. And I was thinking of another way in which to do that. And my personal idea was to have Picard being court-martialed or standing in front of a court-martial because Starfleet's under new leadership. They've got a radical leader who is pissed at what he did 20 years ago and wants to court martial him, and that his arguments are made in front of this court type of trial.
Mm.
And that would have given us an opportunity for him to make that direct appeal to the admirals that he did, or that he's going to do. I'm not sure if that was in this first one yet, but I felt like that's what they could have done. Also, the necklace that she was wearing has an interlocking of two circles. It was like the symbol of them twins. The area in the middle, it's called the Vesica Pisces. It has a lot of historical and religious meaning. This intersection of two circles and the space in between. It's represented all throughout art, architecture, and mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
And for those people out there that are interested in looking up the meaning of that, I would, suggest you to look up Vesica Pisces and what it means, and you can dive deep into a rabbit hole with that.
Nice.
So I thought that was interesting that they used that as her necklace piece, but there's always symbolism, and I'm sure the writers are well aware of the meanings of these various symbols. So
they're really good with that kind of stuff. That's true. They like to have, deeper meanings to everything, because to everybody else, you see two circles intertwined, you're like, okay, I get it. It's twins, two people, whatever. But as you say, there's more than just that. There's that plus a deeper layer to it.
There's a deeper layer of symbolism, and it's an ancient symbolism.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, I do want to finish the thought on Aaron. We'll definitely have to have his wife, Melissa, on. She joins the show every once in a while, and she gives us her own great insights, as well as insights of what she thinks Aaron would say or how he'd react. We worked with him long enough to where we have a pretty good idea. I do think that he would have liked it for sure. He was pretty positive. He definitely liked Discovery a lot. So I think he would have liked Picard even more, but I think you're right that he would definitely find things to critique and pick apart. He did love to really focus in on the photography aspect of things, camera angles, because he was a great photographer. He liked to look at camera angles. He liked to look at, lighting and things like that. So I think you're right that he would really dive deep into that kind of stuff.
I think so too. I don't know what he would say. We know that he was very articulate, and sometimes he would pick out points that were like completely missed by me, by us, and
I miss all points.
Well, no, you don't. You come up with really great ones. I mean, you're right. You're right on with the decaf tea, and you know your points. But he has this interesting take on it too. Some of the things that I also felt held me back in giving this even a higher grading was the tempo. And I wished that the tempo was a little bit accelerated and maybe intertwined with more action. And that's why it was difficult for me. And I know I'm the one saying this when DS9 probably had a very slow tempo, and we could watch that show unfold in the first season was difficult. So I understand that it's the first season, first episode, but I have to be honest about my critique. The tempo was slow at points. There were points when I was saying, okay, let's move on with this scene. One of them was when he was talking with her at his house, and that felt a little slow to me. Mm-hmm. He asked to see the necklace and this and that. They went back and forth. And there were things that didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand why she had a vision of Picard, tracks him down to a vineyard, comes into his house in the middle, out of nowhere after she murders 4 people, right, or kills or defends herself against these
Yeah.
attackers. Sees her boyfriend get killed.
Well, here's
Uh,
hoping they explain that. Star Trek is pretty good about explaining things later on. I mean, right now we're in the second season of Deep
oh
Space Nine,
yeah,
and we're finding all these red herrings in the second season. So hopefully
yeah,
it's not one of
yeah.
those where like something's introduced and it's just like they're like, I don't know, figure it
Yeah, I'm
out. But
pretty sure.
I
I'm
think
pretty sure they're gonna. We have a long way to go.
mm-hmm.
Um, but no, that was my little. There was those were my critiques of the things, and there were other things I thought were on top of it. Like I said, with the replimat and with some of the set designs, some of them were nice.
Yeah, I was
I,
going to ask you next. And for everybody at home in the comments below, this is what I really want to know from all the big Star Trek fans out there. What were the 3 biggest, like fanboy or fangirl moments for you? Was it when he said Earl Grey decaf? Was it when you saw Data playing poker for the first time, or just the Enterprise? What were those 3 things that just kind of like gave you that amazing feeling that we get when Star Trek is back? And so for you, CIRROC, what were the things that really stuck out to you where you really enjoyed it, or you're really curious about it, or you thought was well done?
the first feeling that they got, which was great that they put it right away in the opening scene, was just Data and Picard sitting there playing cards. I think they're playing poker, but they're playing cards, and I instantly was like, okay, we're back. This is it. This is what I've been waiting for. I wanted to see the next generation, the reunion. I want to see these characters interact with each other again, and this is what I'm getting. They're starting with that. So when you combine that with the Enterprise that they showed, right, like segueing into it, that was like right away, like, okay, they gave me the bait and they want me to bite, and I started to bite. Um, the other thing that I thought really, a thing that I enjoyed were the little technology, um, innovative things that they put in there. I mentioned the makeup artist. I like the TV. I like the replimat. And I just like those kinds of little nitpicks, little tiny things, but they're like
Absolutely.
futuristic things that allow me to say, okay, this is the future. Um, and then I can also say, I guess I should say that the end, seeing the Borg ship, kind of was like, oh, okay, something's ominous is coming, and it's
Mm.
about to go down, because they pulling back, and you see this huge ship with all these other ships around it, and you're just thinking, this doesn't look good. Um, and it also gets me kind of excited to see what's around the corner, who's next, what are they gonna find out, what are they gonna see. So
Yeah.
those are my little.
Yeah, so it seems these hipster Romulans are basically doing experiments and possibly also living um, in this Borg cube. So, the Borg have been destroyed, they've been defeated, and now they're just living, they're working on this gigantic, enormous Borg cube and running their experiments or their science tests. Um, and yeah, we don't know. And we all know that there's a possibility that suddenly the Borg cube can come alive again. Is that going to happen? I don't know. Um, but clearly, there's a lot that's going to happen there. We've got Romulans, we've got Borg, we've got an android up there. There's all these elements on that cube right now, and who knows how it's going to play out. One thing I did notice was those bad guys who were revealed to be Romulans. They're a lot like stormtroopers in that they really can't hit anything with their lasers.
Yeah.
Like she was Picard was sitting still and they couldn't hit him with the laser. She was running directly at one and he was shooting at her feet.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but I was like, oh, it's like our Star Wars stormtrooper. We love those guys. So
they were stormtrooper like. And don't let them throw up on you, ladies and gentlemen, because that's clearly worse than The Exorcist.
You don't have to tell me that, man.
You don't want to get thrown up on by a Romulan right before they're about to die. Not a good move.
So we only have a few minutes left here before we have to run.
Well, what were your takeaways? You didn't really weigh in on that. What were your big moments that really,
Well, I will say, first of all, that I think I liked it better the second time around. The first time I watched it, it was I needed more time to digest it because I like that it's more sophisticated. I like that it's more refined. I like that it's a more mature version of Star Trek. It is a little slow paced, but that's more of a critique than it is something that actually bothers me as a person. That's just something where objectively I say, oh, maybe it could have been faster. But me as a fan, it didn't really bother me the second time around, especially. So it did take me a second viewing before I could really decide how I felt about it. And I do think I liked it significantly more the second time because then I was used to the pacing. I was used to the flavor of it. And now we know that it's something where you have to listen to every line and every word because there's a lot of complicated exposition in there. And the story is going to be pretty complex. It's not just going to be there's an alien and you got to figure it out and there's a twist at the end, like how Star Trek usually is. It's going to be there's 15 different elements, and they're all intertwined in one way or another. And each, it's going to be, it's going to be more Game of Thrones. It's going to be more Discovery than it's going to be Deep Space Nine or Next Generation. So, but now that I'm used to that pacing, I like it. I like the opening theme. I like that we have options now. If you want explosions and science is cool and I like math, then that Discovery is more your flavor. If you want to watch Picard as a person making human decisions, living a real life, or something that feels more real than just the utopia and the plastic smiles of Next Generation, then you're going to like Picard more. I'm perfectly happy and fine with it, and I'm ready to watch it every week. I didn't really have a favorite part. I just, for me, Picard was my favorite character, so I guess that is my favorite part. I could watch him act all day long. I like that he's a charming old man now. I like that he's weakened. I like that he's frail. I like that he's real. Because so many times, we have these heroes that are just perfect in every way. And they always win and they always are amazing. We always look up to them. And sometimes it's really cool to see that hero be a real person. And it seems like Picard is going to be the story of a real person now.
Yeah, I see that. It's a lot more dialogue and it's more cerebral. It's not just eye candy. It's there's actually acting and performances there and these intimate scenes. Some of which, like you said, are great for you because you want to see Picard doing his thing. Sometimes for me, I felt like, okay, let's get moving on with the scene. There's only two actors in this shot. It's a conversation between two people, and I don't want it to go on too long because let's move on to the next thing. Let's keep it going. So, there were pace issues there for me, but overall, it's exciting to see kind of this new journey and where it's going to end up. I know we're just starting. That's why I don't want to get too hard on it. I know it's going to continue to find its way and its path because, it's not about watching Picard make wine, right? This is about
I'd
his
watch
journey.
it.
This is about his journey, right? That's what he was doing all this time, I guess,
Yeah.
supposedly. So now this is about his journey, finding his way back, finding it on his own terms, which I think is going to be the thing to look forward to. I feel like he's defining a place where he's doing it on his own terms, by challenging Starfleet, by challenging the Federation, and really saying he wants to find his own way. I feel like that's the exciting part of this. What's he going to do? How's he going to do it? Is he going to ask for permission or is he going to ask for forgiveness? And those are the kinds of, decisions I'm looking forward to seeing.
Two quick things. There was another line I really liked. And again, I like to point it out when people come up with good lines because they need to hear that. Writers don't always get, that kind of feedback. I know you're a tough critic and I'm a tough critic, and we'll beat them to death if they say something stupid or if they come up with something stupid, because that happens a lot. It's not easy to do, to write something that's amazing or perfect. But so here's a line that I thought was great. When Picard asks the scientist played by Alison Pill about something cybernetic, and she says, the short answer is no. And he says, give me the long answer. And she says, it'll still be no. And I was like, that's cool. She delivered it well. It was written well. It was cute. It was fun.
Yeah.
Solid kudos there. The other thing I wanted to point out was that the themes of the series, the moral themes are obvious here. They've been laid out. It's xenophobia. There's a refugee crisis. The xenophobia is with the droids, the androids, which
synthetics.
Which is like the stereotypical trope about not trusting AI. Like there's so many movies and TV shows about AI, artificial intelligence gone wrong. This is playing on that trope, but it's kind of showing the other side of it, kind of saying, hey, dude, you guys, we don't have to be xenophobic about these guys or fill in the blank any race you want it to be. So I think those are the main things that we're going to be writing throughout this season and probably through the entire series.
Yeah, and I wanted to just piggyback off what you said about the scientist. You said played by Alison
Pill. Yeah,
Alison Pill. I enjoy her performance. I wrote down delightful because that's what I feel like when she's on screen. She's delightful. She's informative. She's smart. She's not irritating or pushy or, there's just nice qualities about her. I think she's going to make a good scientist in this show.
That's a good point. I also like it when people don't try to do too much. It takes a mature actor to just go as far as the character needs it to go and not try to overdo it. If there's a funny line, sometimes they try to say the line too funny, or if there's, they're just trying too hard. And she seemed to be very comfortable in talking perfectly naturally. And so,
her pace wasn't rushed. She played down things that she should play down. She played up. She gave respect where she should give respect. She didn't act like the know-it-all, even though she clearly knew more than he did. But then at the same time, she's like, well, okay, now I'm talking to somebody who I should treat with respect and give the information to in an honest, open way and share, and that we'll learn together. So I felt like there was a vulnerability to her that matched well with her intellect. So that was really good. So shout out to Alison.
Any final thoughts? We've got 1 minute left.
Well, I had a question for you. My question was about the Romulan characters that are his Bordeaux mates.
Right.
And are they characters that we've seen in the past?
No. So I believe what we're supposed to surmise is that they are refugees of, Romulan star going supernova. And so that's why it's similar to our real world situation with refugees, with xenophobia, with immigration, because what these are is, obviously these are refugees that have been brought into a new place, and now they're working for Picard. And, I'm sure knowing him, he was probably like, hey, I can only afford one helper, but, they came as a pair. And so he said, all right, I'll figure out a way to take both. And he treats them with respect, not kind of like just, that's just the hired help, So they're clearly friends, and it's a very good friendship to where they help him around the chateau, and he lets them live there, or whatever their arrangement is. It's a mutual respect kind of thing. But yeah,
I'm
we've
glad you
never seen
clarified that for me, because I didn't quite have that understanding. So this is a refugee situation, and they're on this status of kind of a second tier class citizen, right?
Well, they haven't explained exactly how all that works, but as far as we know, whether you want to call them refugees or whether you want to call them immigrants, what they are is Romulans that came to
Right.
Earth because their home is now destroyed, and
Okay.
Picard has taken them in, and now they're kind of part of the family, and they live with them and work with them.
Okay, it's a good, interesting little background. I didn't know if they were characters in the past. They seem to have known Picard really well, and his instincts and what he's been going through. So obviously there was a lot of conversations that happened that we weren't privy to in the past, right? Because they had a very good closeness with Picard, and that's why I had to ask if they were introduced in the past or if they were characters that we knew from before.
Yeah, so we got a lot more to cover, but we're out of time. So we'll definitely hit up a lot more things when we come back next week. Unless you've got one last 10-second thing you want to throw out there. I saw you flipping your pages. Did you draw?
No, the only thing I have to say is don't have Picard doing any more running scenes where he has to run up steps, guys.
That was a stunt double. I saw from behind.
Yeah.
That was totally a stunt double.
Okay,
Not what it was based on.
It's not easy for the guy to be doing all that running, guys. Have him be stationary a little bit.
I did not do 40 years of Shakespeare to run upstairs, damn it.
Very good, very good.
All right.
No, that's it.
Great. Well, for all of you joining us, thank you so much. Please remember to subscribe to The Seventh Rule, hit the bell icon, find us on social media, and for CIRROC LOFTON, for Aaron Eisenberg, for Russ Hasledge, my name is Ryan T. Husk, and always remember The Seventh Rule.